Most people think successful people know something they don't. They don't. They notice something you keep ignoring. That's the difference. The strange part is, you've been surrounded by clues your entire life. You watched people build incredible careers, create businesses, transform their health, repair relationships, stay calm under pressure. You admired the outcome, but skipped the pattern that created it. And patterns are where lives change, not inspiration, not talent, patterns. You don't notice it immediately. Imagine two people standing at the edge of a forest. One sees trees, the other sees footprints. The first says, "I have no idea how anyone gets through this." The second quietly smiles. Because every footprint proves someone already found a way. Life works exactly like that. Every extraordinary result leaves evidence behind. Not secrets. Evidence. The problem isn't that the clues are hidden. It's that your mind has been trained to look somewhere else. You've probably caught yourself doing it. Late at night. Scrolling through videos of people living the life you secretly want. The apartment, the business, the confidence, the freedom. For a few minutes, it feels motivating. Then something strange happens. You close the app feeling smaller than when you opened it. Why? Because comparison asks, "Why aren't I there?" Curiosity asks, "What did they repeatedly do that I don't?" One question creates envy. The other creates growth. That's when the real problem begins. Most people study outcomes. Very few study processes. They see someone speaking confidently. They don't see the hundreds of awkward conversations that came first. They see a profitable company. They don't see the years of uncertainty, rejection, and invisible work. They see someone financially free. They don't notice the thousands of ordinary financial decisions nobody celebrated. At first, this feels unfair. You wonder if they had advantages you never had. Sometimes they did, but here's what nobody realizes. Advantages explain where someone starts. Patterns explain where they finish. That's a completely different conversation. Think about learning to drive it the first time behind the wheel. Every movement demanded attention. Mirrors, pedals, turns, traffic. Everything felt overwhelming. Years later, you arrive home and barely remember the drive. Not because the road became easier, because the pattern became automatic. Your life is built the same way. Everything you repeat eventually stops feeling like a decision. It becomes who you are, and that's where people quietly get trapped. They don't repeat extraordinary habits. They repeat ordinary excuses. I'll start after this busy week. I'm waiting for the right opportunity. I need more confidence first. Each excuse sounds harmless. None of them feel life-changing. Individually, they're tiny. Repeated for years, they become an identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who acts. You become someone who prepares forever, and preparation feels productive. Until you realize preparation without action is another form of hiding. The uncomfortable truth is, your brain loves collecting information. Because learning feels like movement, even when you're standing still. That's why you can watch 50 videos about discipline, read 10 books about success, listen to endless podcasts, and still feel stuck. Knowledge creates the feeling of progress. Patterns create actual progress. There's a huge difference, and this changes everything. Because it means your future isn't waiting for one massive breakthrough. It's waiting for one repeated behavior, one conversation you keep avoiding, one skill you keep postponing, one promise you keep breaking to yourself. Success leaves clues. Failure does too. The question is, which clues have you been practicing every day without realizing it? Here's the irony. The clues you've been searching for were never hidden. They were too ordinary to impress you. You wanted transformation to feel dramatic. Life usually delivers it through repetition. Think about someone you deeply respect, not someone famous, someone whose life feels solid. They keep their word. They stay calm under pressure. They manage money without panic. They don't seem to chase validation every 5 minutes. It looks effortless, it isn't. You're seeing the final chapter of habits that have been repeated for years. That's the danger of comparison. You compare your beginning to someone else's routine, not their beginning, their routine. And routines don't look exciting. Nobody applauds the person who reads 20 pages every night. Nobody celebrates someone who invests a small amount every month. Nobody notices the person who consistently makes one difficult phone call instead of avoiding it. These actions don't create instant results. They create identities. That's the clue. Successful people don't repeatedly ask, "How do I stay motivated?" They quietly build lives that require less motivation. Because they've learned something most people miss. Environment beats willpower. Patterns beat intensity. Consistency beats inspiration. This changes everything. Because you've probably been trying to force yourself to become a different person, while keeping the same environment, the same distractions, the same late-night scrolling, the same people who normalize staying stuck, the same promises you break every Monday. That's like planting healthy seeds in poisoned soil and wondering why nothing grows. Your surroundings are teaching you something every day. The only question is, what lesson are they repeating? Look at your phone. It knows more about your future than your journal does. Not because it's magical, because it records your patterns, hours spent consuming, minutes spent creating, search history, screen time. Every tap quietly reveals what you're becoming. That's uncomfortable, but it's also freeing, because patterns can be changed. Identity can be rewritten, not overnight, repeatedly. There's another clue successful people leave behind. They become very careful about the stories they tell themselves. Listen closely to your inner voice. When something goes wrong, what happens? Do you say, "I'm terrible with money. I always quit. People like me never succeed"? Those don't sound like observations. They sound like verdicts. A verdict ends the conversation. A better question opens one. Instead of, "Why am I like this?" ask, "What pattern created this? And what pattern could replace it?" That's a completely different life. Because problems become personal when you think your identity caused them. They become solvable when you realize your habits did. And habits can change. Slowly, quietly, powerfully. One better decision rarely changes a life. 10,000 better decisions do. Not because each one is extraordinary, because each one votes for a different identity. One workout says, "I'm someone who keeps promises." 1 hour of focused work says, "I'm someone who finishes." One difficult conversation says, "I don't let fear make my decisions." Those votes accumulate until one day, people call you disciplined, confident, successful. They see the result. You remember the clues, the ordinary moments nobody noticed, the mornings you wanted to quit, the evenings you chose growth over comfort, the days progress felt invisible. The clues were never glamorous, they were consistent. So maybe success has never been a mystery. Maybe it has always been a trail left by ordinary people making slightly better decisions than they made yesterday. Not perfect decisions, better ones. And now the trail is in front of you. You don't need permission to follow it. You don't need certainty. You don't need to become someone else before you begin. You only need the humility to admit that someone already solved problems you're facing. And the curiosity to study the pattern instead of envying the outcome. Because every meaningful achievement leaves evidence. Every failure leaves evidence too. Tomorrow morning, before your mind reaches for another excuse, ask yourself one question. What clue am I leaving behind with the next decision I make? Because your future isn't being written by your goals. It's being written by your patterns. And once you start seeing the clues, you'll find them everywhere. If this felt a little too close to home, maybe that's because your next breakthrough won't come from finding a new secret. It will come from finally following the clues that have been there all along.